Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we're just going to take a look at a very interesting relationship in Kaiju number 8. One that we haven't seen much of yet, but what we have seen is just interesting. So that's the relationship between the Director General, Commander Shinomiya, and the Captain of the 1st Division, Narumi. Now, these two, their relationship is it's really hard for me to describe, but it's definitely significant. We haven't seen much of it, but General Director Shinomiya, we know he's more than just a hardline commander. We know this man has genuine compassion. He cares about his troops. He cares about his daughter. He seems to have been forged into his current emotional state rather than being born into it. He seems like a man who's, meant to be, if everything had gone peacefully in his time, he would have been just a loving father who is competent at his job. But the trials and stresses of the defense force, of the constant kaiju attacks, have forced him into this more hardline personality. Now, traditionally, in most storytelling, be it Eastern or Western storytelling, when you have that commander figure, whatever his natural personality is, if the job forces him into that hard line, making the hard choices, if this is the guy who has to make the decision to put down Old Yeller, he generally does not get along at all well with the hot-shot young captain character. And just having these two characters clash is one of the major points of tension that shows up in nearly every movie where they share screen time, because it's actually a very logical, realistic conflict. The hotshot young captain who doesn't play by the rules and is constantly going off on his own to get the job done no matter what the cost is going to clash with the rule-fying, law-abiding older officer who has been burned many times in the past by that kind of reckless stupidity. There should be that inherent conflict between them, but it's not there, at least not there in any form that I recognize. Instead, they have a very paternal relationship, it seems like. Again, we haven't seen much of this relationship, but the first time we see it is in the testing room when Kafka's just speared his own chest, and Commander Shinomiya quietly, without telling Narumi, tells him to back down and put down his weapon. And so this tells us, first off, that Commander Shinomiya expects Narumi to obey him. He doesn't even turn to look at Narumi. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't make it an order. He just says, back down, put down your weapon. And Narumi does. Even though Narumi clearly doesn't want to, Narumi clearly wants to drive that blade right into Kafka's back and into the threat. He sighs, tosses his hair back, and says, when you didn't call for backup, I thought you were going to die. Now, this should have been our first clue that Narumi was the hotshot captain who doesn't take anything from anybody. But when Shinomiya's response is what really struck me after the fact. At the time when I first read that chapter, I had assumed that Narumi was a hyper-competent captain like Mina. But later we find out he's only competent in his job, but otherwise he's completely off the rails. So Shinomiya's reaction makes a lot less sense in that context. Shinomiya practically grins, but he definitely relaxes and seems to smile a bit as he stands up and responds to Narumi's, not irresponsible is not the word, almost disrespectful comment. Now, in that culture, a hardline commander like that, when getting such a disrespectful comment from a subordinate, should have reacted negatively. But Shinomiya reacts not just not negatively, he reacts downright positively. He goes along with the joke and he goes, nonsense. Although he did, Kaiju number 8 did surpass my expectations. He clearly has a very warm relationship with Captain Narumi just from this one scene. Then, when we see them together in the office, when Director Shinomiya is ordering Narumi to take up Kafka, when Narumi just flat out refuses a direct order, Commander Shinomiya doesn't get angry, he doesn't get overreact, he barely gets stern. He gets stern, but even that just very calmly and not very much. And he starts to explain his decision. Now, this is highly unusual in a military setting. Not so much among the super higher ranking officers when they actually have to discuss stuff. But again, there's that sensation that General Director Shinomiya's response was much gentler than I would have expected. And again, in real life, there are many, many shades of relationship. But this isn't real life. It's a story. And in the story, there should be direct, active conflict between these two, even if they like each other, even if they respect each other. The higher ranking, experienced, rule-following general should absolutely have a negative emotional response to active defiance by the hotshot young captain. But that's not what we're seeing. General Shinomiya really does seem to have a gentle paternal response to Captain Narumi. And this does make sense. We're looking at 3 data points here. I think it really boils down to General Shinomiya's character, because the 3 data points are his relationship with Kikoru, his relationship with Narumi, and his relationship with Kafka. Number 1, he let Kafka live. He went out of the way, put his own life on the line, and he laid the truth out in front of Kafka simply and honestly and called Kafka by his name. Acts of compassion that's a nearly divine level of compassion, that brotherly love, no greater love has this than a man lay down his life for his neighbor. And then there was the hints about his relationship with Kikoru. They don't have that classic broken relationship that you normally get between a hard driving father and a willing daughter. Because even though their relationship is not perfect, Kikoru still trusted him enough to call him daddy and express her opinions at the end of that first interview where we see them together for the first time in current time and not a flashback. And he did not reprimand her for it. He did not have a super negative reaction. Again, it's just that quiet, gentle, emotional response to that. So it really seems to be that they're building Commander Shinomiya up to be this gentle soul who's been forced into this position, and the kind of officer who can make that work for him, because that's just the General Director Shinomiya side of things. On the Narumi side of things, Narumi only respects power, or so he says. I think Narumi's a lot more complex and might be more sentimental than he will ever admit, but Narumi claims to only respect power. Now, clearly, Director Shinomiya is very powerful and therefore has Narumi's respect for that. Director Shinomiya was probably Captain Narumi's idol growing up, but there is a lack of emotional friction between Captain Narumi and General Director Shinomiya on both sides. And on General Director Shinomiya's side, it seems to be explained by his gentle soul. But on Narumi's side, I really think he has bonded to General Director Shinomiya. Perhaps Narumi lost his father and kind of bonded to Shinomiya. But there really does seem to be that close bond between them. Now, if it does exist, Kikoru doesn't seem to be aware of it or doesn't seem to care about it. Now, if that's true, that would speak to, again, a more mature and a healthier relationship than the classic storytelling trope would have us believe. And since this creator is so good at hiding things behind the expected tropes, I really expect these two things, these 2 relationships, or rather the 3 relationships, because you have General Director Shinomiya's relationship with Kikoru, his relationship with Kafka, and his relationship with Captain Narumi. I think these relationships are going to really play into the story. I think they're there primarily just to make it hurt all the worse when General Director Shinomiya inevitably makes the heroic sacrifice, because, well, come on, we all know he's not long for this world. I made a whole video about it earlier, but I think the creator is going for maximum pain and suffering, and the general director is going to live just long enough to fully bring these relationships into the full blossom of their glory. So that's my thought on the relationship between Captain Narumi and General Director Shinomiya. Check out the book links below the video to check out my book, Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, a book of human absurdity. And peace out, my wonderful viewers.
The book from author Betty Adams, Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, is a humorous look at human behavior through the eyes of aliens. This book is arranged in separate reports or essays, documenting the experiences with humanity through the lens of the aliens who have to interact with them. This anthology of short stories and vignettes from alien points of view highlights some of humanity's quirks we can all relate to. Author Betty Adams captures how strange and interesting humans can really be. This is a fun collection of stories you will really get a kick out of. Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, from author Betty Adams. Order your copy right now on Amazon.